Have you ever read a line in a contract or a law and thought, wait, what does that actually mean? Well, today we're diving deep into that very question. We're not just reading the law, we're solving its puzzles, exploring the hidden craft of figuring out what our laws are truly trying to say. And I love this quote from William Eskridge because it sets the scene perfectly. For the longest time, the whole idea of interpreting a statute, a law, was seen as, the boring part of the job. But then something big changed, and all of a sudden, this legal Cinderella was the most important person at the ball. So, why was our Cinderella stuck doing chores for so long? To get that, we have to look at a massive shift in how governments are even structured. Okay, so check out this contrast. In the old world of parliamentary supremacy, whatever the legislature said, that was it. End of story. But then came constitutional supremacy, and this introduced a brand new, higher power, the Constitution itself. Suddenly, every single law had to be measured against this ultimate rulebook, and that forced judges to ask a new, critical question. Okay, but does this law actually fit with the Constitution? And just like that, the act of interpretation became absolutely essential. So, now Cinderella's at the ball. Let's talk about the people who make it all happen, the judges. And they're not just umpires calling balls and strikes. No, they're more like master craftspeople. And this is their main tool, statutory interpretation. It's the formal name for the process of digging into the language of a law to figure out what it's supposed to do, so it can be applied the way lawmakers actually wanted it to be. And this phrase just nails it. Judges don't create the laws from scratch. They get the raw material from the legislature, and then it's their job to finish it, to refine it, to polish it, so it actually works in the messy real world. You can kind of break this whole process down into two big steps. First, there's the brainy part, figuring out what the words actually mean. That's like a builder reading the architect's blueprint. But then comes the really creative part, applying that meaning to a unique, complicated, real-life case. That's like taking the blueprint and actually building the house, making it all work on a real plot of land. And if you're looking for where this authority comes from, well, this is it. This famous line from Marbury v. Madison is the bedrock. It says, flat out, that it is the job, the duty of the courts to be the final word on what the law is. All right, enough theory. Let's see how this craft works in the real world. We're going to tackle a couple of fascinating word puzzles that real judges had to solve. Here's our first puzzle. The law against bigamy seems simple, right? If you're married, don't marry someone else. But look at the specific words here. Shall marry. That phrase, it turns out, creates a massive logical problem. I mean, think about it for a second. If you're already married, the law says you can't legally enter into another marriage. Your second wedding is void from the start, so you can't legally marry someone else. If you read the law literally, it's describing a crime that's impossible to commit. It's a total paradox. So what did the court do? Well, they said the literal reading is absurd. It makes no sense. So instead of defining marry as the legal act of getting married, they interpreted it more broadly. They said it means to go through a marriage ceremony. And boom, just like that, the puzzle is solved and the law actually works. Okay, on to puzzle number 2. There's a law that makes it a crime to obstruct the military in the vicinity of a restricted area. Seems clear enough, but in this case, the guy wasn't near the area, he was right smack in the middle of it. And this, again, leads to a ridiculous situation. Is the law seriously saying it's legal to cause a problem right outside the fence of a military base, but it's totally fine if you hop the fence and do it inside? Of course not. That would be completely backward. So once again, the court had to step in and prevent a nonsensical outcome. They expanded the meaning of in the vicinity of to include being inside the place too. They knew the whole point of the law was to protect the base, and they made sure their interpretation did just that. What these cases really show is that judges aren't just playing word games. They're on a mission. They're trying to decode what the lawmakers were actually trying to accomplish when they wrote the law in the first place. And that's the real North Star for a judge, the intention of the legislature. They're constantly asking, what was the goal here? What problem was this law created to fix? But, it's not always that easy. I mean, for one thing, language can be really fuzzy. Plus, how could lawmakers from, say, the 1950s have possibly anticipated things like the internet or artificial intelligence? And as our whole society changes, the context around a law can shift, sometimes leading to results nobody ever saw coming. Now, even though this whole process is pretty creative, it's definitely not a free-for-all. Judges can't just make up whatever they want. Their entire craft is governed by that ultimate rule book we talked about, the Constitution. And the absolute foundation of that rulebook is the separation of powers. It's pretty straightforward. The legislative branch writes the laws, the executive branch carries them out, and the judicial branch, as we've seen, tells us what they mean. Everyone's supposed to stay in their own lane. But you can probably see where this gets tricky, right? If a judge has to decide what "in the vicinity of" means, are they just explaining the law, or are they changing it? It raises that central question: where does interpreting the law end and making a new one begin? And that right there is the fundamental tension of this entire field. It's a constant, delicate balancing act. A judge has to clarify and apply the law, but they have to do it without crossing that critical line and becoming a lawmaker themselves. And all of this leaves us with one of the biggest, most fascinating questions in the entire legal world. Should a law's meaning be frozen in time, locked to what the words meant when they were first written? Or should a law be more like a living thing, with a meaning that can grow and evolve as our society changes? It's a puzzle that's never really solved, and it's right at the heart of our most important legal debates.